Yes, sir.
Look, I'd like to put it to Rick, but also to all the panellists.
Yeah.
Has there been a category change in venture capital funding? And if there hasn't been to date, is that something that you visualise needs to occur to anticipate the explosion you'd like to see in Australia of this entrepreneurial skill set?
Yeah. So I think there has been, and I would say that as I hope we are one of the defining organisations that's growing up in it. So Australian venture has been through a number of waves, and in 2012 there was almost no venture left in the system. It was scorched earth. There were like a couple of smaller funds that had literally a few slots left. And the Australian superannuation funds, who are the natural funders of the ecosystem, had turned off the tap.
Why was that?
Because they hadn't got the returns that they wanted out of the last batch of venture funds that they'd backed. And they decided that it was not an asset class to back. And that was at the point at which we started Blackbird Ventures, because we thought that was a really awesome contrarian opportunity to go and find, at the same time we had this thesis of finding founders to back our fund. And so our first fund is $29 million, a tiny fund. We have 97 limited partners, investors in that fund. It took us 22 months to raise. We had 530 meetings in order to raise that fund. It was crazy.
Not that you were counting.
And we were counting. So since 2012, there have been a new, group of VCs that have popped up, and I think that's really, really exciting. I think these VCs are looking at the problem in a different way. I think they're taking, hopefully, a lot of the learnings from the past group. I think they're much more oriented towards the way Silicon Valley is doing it, and the optimism and taking bigger risks, not so much being financial investors, but trying to be real helpful investors. And we're starting to see the superannuation funds start to come back in the market. And we're still learning, we're still a young industry, but I feel really good about it. It's a really good start. We're 4 years, the new industry is 4 years into a very long journey, but it's feeling good.
Is this a global phenomenon?
Just ask that question again, John. What was the question?
Is this a global phenomenon?
So in Silicon Valley, it's been there. This is just it's continued to accelerate in Silicon Valley, and we've seen lots of new what are called micro VC funds, smaller funds pop up in Silicon Valley in an ecosystem that until recently was dominated by about 6 firms. 6 firms had done most of the category kings, right?
Yep.
And what we're seeing now is these micro VCs who jumped in underneath at a time when it was really contrarian to bet on the early stage and there's a gap in the market there, step up and become the next. So we're starting to see a little bit of sort of change and flux in Silicon Valley. But around the world, in non-Silicon Valley, I think, yes, absolutely it's happening. It's becoming far more, the barriers to success and building big companies out of Silicon Valley are coming down and continue to come down.
I was going to actually add that point, which I think what's the great thing that's happened in Australia is the global focus. So this idea that Blackbird has this thesis they'll only invest in companies that are global from day one. That's a big change. It's not people saying, we know the local industry, we have local relationships, come in and we can help you succeed. It's, we only want you if you're going to a market we don't understand. And that's actually really cool. And I think we're seeing it here in Australia. You're definitely seeing it in Europe. So you're seeing like Point 9 Capital and Atomico and some of these ones that are founded by investors and entrepreneurs. And they're doing the same thing. And it's actually taking advantage of the fact that the valley is really myopic. And so there's this incredible concentration, but there's so much that they never look beyond the city mile. And there's all these opportunities for people outside that are willing to try a bit harder and go a little bit further. Yeah. So it's actually quite exciting.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm not sure if this is where you were going, but I think one thing that's interesting to think about is equity crowdfunding, and I'm thinking of things like AngelList and sort of the unbundling of VC. I don't think that anyone's really turning down term sheets from Sequoia and Benchmark to take a syndicate lead on AngelList, but I think they're definitely filling a gap that previously wasn't being filled in that way. So I think that's an interesting one. And then I guess the question will be: is there a global winner, i.e., AngelList, and there's no AngelList for Australia or AngelList for Singapore or whatever, or does the territory get carved up regionally?